You may be wondering, what do we do if taking the square root of both sides and factoring don't work? How will we solve our quadratic? Well, before I give you the answer, let's remind ourselves. What does a quadratic equation look like in standard form? First, we have our x squared term, ax squared, plus bx plus c equals y. In standard form, our largest exponent comes first. A is always the coefficient of our x squared term. B is always the coefficient of our x term. C is our constant. Here you'll notice to make a little note that says you should change y to 0. And why is that? Because the roots we're trying to solve for are x-intercepts. And whenever you work with an x-intercept, y is 0. So back to our question. What do we use when taking the square root and factoring don't work? The answer is the quadratic formula. So given a quadratic in standard form, we have the following formula. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now this is a bit extensive, so we have a little tune to help us remember it later. It goes to Pop Goes the Weasel. I'll sing it once through and then you can join in. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Alright, join in with me this time. I'll slow it down. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Alright, now let's practice putting and solving for one quadratic equation. In this case, let's solve 2x squared plus 1x minus 6 equals 0 by finding its roots. So step 1, whenever using the quadratic formula, is to identify a, b, and c. Now remember, a is always in front of x squared. That means a is 2. B is always the coefficient of x, so b is 1. C is our constant term, so c is negative 6. Our second step is to place that a, b, and c into our formula. So feel free to sing it out again. X equals the opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now notice, opposite of b, which is 1, makes it negative. So make sure you have your sign. Then we have our plus or minus, our square root, our discriminant or our radicand underneath, and 2 times a at the bottom. Alright, moving along, step 3. Now we need to simplify and actually find our roots. So here's our formula filled in. Step 3 has us focus on the radicand, the item underneath the radical, as well as our denominator. Denominator is pretty straightforward. 2 times 2 is just 4. Our radicand, on the other hand, is 1 squared minus 4 times 2 times a negative 6. Now this negative and this negative make a positive, so when we combine this up here using order of operations, we should get 49. Now for step 4. We want to take the square root of the item under the radical. 49 is a perfect square, so the square root of 49 is 7. Now, since we are solving a quadratic, we should have 2 solutions, or at most 2 solutions. So taking our quadratic formula, we have simplified it down. Now we're going to separate it out. Once with the plus sign, and once with the minus sign. Again, by order of operations, negative 1 plus 7 is 6, and 6 divided by 4 is 3 halves, or 1.5. Negative 1 minus 7 is negative 8, divided by 4 is negative 2. So our solutions for this quadratic are 3 halves and a negative 2. So now you have 3 methods for solving a quadratic. First, we have taking square roots, then there's factoring, and then there's the all-important quadratic formula, which will work on any quadratic.